Okay, so it's Wednesday evening. I'm in the car park outside of the North Warwickshire Borough Council. There's just been a meeting of full council, and there's going to be a lot of the people leaving this council meeting tonight very disappointed, and that's because the chamber was full and the public gallery was beyond full. It was overflowing, and it was overflowing with supporters of Atherstone Town Community Football Club. Atherstone United. Because there was a motion tonight around granting the football club a lease on their ground for 30 years. Now, first of all, there's a lot of toing and froing. So the motion was very simple. The motion was beyond simple. It was that the council resolves, I don't even said that the council will grant a lease for 30 years within 6 months to the football club. And there was an amendment that came, so that motion was placed by 2 Labour councillors. An amendment was made by the Conservative group that acknowledged work that had already been done with the football club, and previous work and previous situations with the football club and the town council, borough council, and that it continues to work on that kind of basis rather than making a decision in the chamber tonight. Now, we were made aware of that motion ahead of the meeting. The people who proposed the motion weren't. And so there's a whole sort of like back and forth on a party political basis. And we've had this before in the chamber, where the farmers and the situation with the farmers, where they were all present and they were here for a motion that became party political. The farmers more so because it was explicit in the motion. This is more explicit in terms of the lines along which voting fell and groups working together or not. And now, the one thing that happened as well was we became aware of it beforehand. It was also suggested to us that the agenda changed so that this became the first item on the agenda, and it wasn't. So everyone had to go through the whole business of accepting minutes of all the various boards and taking back, which is tedious and boring, and an awful, and most of the people there were wondering what on earth's going on. Now, I would have brought that motion forward, and I did look through standing orders to see if there was anything that I could do to force a vote on that. The only thing I could find actually was that we'd move on to the next item of business, and by the time that you get to that, we couldn't have not accepted the minutes or going through, and it would have just led to more kerfuffle and disruption. So I didn't pass comment. Similarly is that Councillor Mark Simpson, who's for someone I have a great deal of respect, I would like to have a conversation with him with a comment that he made in relation to the Standards Board, because I think there are wider issues at stake, and I'll talk to him about those personally, if he will, and I'm sure he will, because he's a reasonable chap. Now, we then had the debate on the football club motion, and we proposed what's known as a friendly amendment. So when I say we, that's the North Warwickshire Independent Representatives, and the original motion had this thing about 6 months. So we included that a report would come back to full council within 6 months. When that actually got accepted or proposed by Caroline Simmons, something got lost in the whispers, and so that was that a report would go back to Resources Board within 6 months, which possibly is procedurally correct, but I think it was important for the people that were there that it was seen to be dealt with by the highest possible authority. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't, sort of like a report will go to Resources Board that would enable a report to go back to full council. It's it's quite noticeable that when you go to Resources Board, Councillor Simmons, who chairs it, very well, I'm not criticising the chairman, but she always makes the point saying the usual level of public participation, there's no one here. And again, I think that sort of shows with how the public regards working groups and subcommittees, unless there's a planning issue that relates specifically to them. Now, that could be that Resources Board does have, you know, a lot of people turn up. But hopefully that report will be published in advance so people can read it, because it could well say there's no update as yet. But again, there'll be the opportunity to question what stage is there. So we proposed that amendment because we felt that one of the key things in the original motion was that there was a timescale to it. So we went and took that, and again, as is our way, we went and spoke to all of the party groups, you know, and they're all happy that we'd gone and spoken to them. They weren't all in agreement with what we'd said, but you know, is that we try and build consensus. It was accepted by the Conservative group who put forward the motion, and then there was a debate, and the debate consisted of a lot of people speaking about, you know, on various things, and I made the point that security of tenure is really, really important for football clubs. It allows for grant funding, but also at the same time is that you have to have security of existence as well. And the concern is that just as a 4G pitch can really, really boost the community, it can really, really, you know, bring on and address wider issues, you know, in terms of giving kids something to do, you know, around the usage of that pitch. But those pitches have a shelf life, and you want to see that there is an ongoing sustainability aspect, because you have to put a lot of money by, and that money's there. That money can be created. But similarly is that if it isn't, you can find yourself with a football club that actually is in a really, really precarious situation in 15 years' time. So we don't want that. The point was made by Councillor Hayfield, against someone from a great deal of respect for, saying, well, we might not be here in 2 years as a body, so why would we agree to a 30-year lease? My point, which I made to that, is if we ain't going to be here in 2 years, we really, really need to push something through now, because otherwise you go back to square one. The political makeup of that authority could be based out of Warwick, you know, so that whole localism kind of agenda for it is taken there. The point was made that that site had been, you know, identified as a potential housing site. I'm not quite sure what the point was being made there, because the local plan has been reopened, but things don't come off local plans. Things don't come off local plans generally, you know. We know why the individual concerned raised it, and they raised it for the benefit of their particular patch, you know, and I get that, you know, but to suggest that the motion gets voted down because it might be a housing site just don't make sense. That makes no sense at all to me. However, so first of all, the way the procedure works is that you vote on the amendment, and the amendment contained all of these things, and it was asked for a named vote, which is where everyone has which way they vote recorded against their name. Now, we abstained on the amendment as a group. You know, we don't whip, but we all talked it through between ourselves, and we all agreed that, you know, everyone was free to vote which way, but we decided, each of us decided that we were probably going to abstain. And there were 20 votes in favour, 8 against and 3 abstentions, which was myself and Councillors Osborne and Wapples. The reason why we didn't vote against was because there was not enough in the substantive motion to allow it to continue, and the amendment as listed, again, was too far the other way. However, once the amendment became the main motion, we voted in favour of it, simply because it kept a deal on the table, and it kept the commitment to continue to talk to the football club and for a report to come back in 6 months. To vote that down, that means there'd be no commitment in any way towards the football club. And so I in one way I understand the vote against for the disappointment aspect, but at the same time is that if that's the best deal on the table, you take that deal right now, because you can't bring another motion back within 6 months, really. You know, it's a really difficult question. So that motion goes down. And that was the main headlines, and that's why I think most people will be watching this video tonight, if there's any extra viewers. Thank you ever so much for turning up. Then there was a motion that was brought by the North Warwickshire Independent representatives, led leading on this motion was Councillors Osborne and Wapples in relation to CCTV within North Warwickshire, and all the various systems being linked up and networked, and individual councils having the ability, and talking about parishes here and town and village councils, being able to buy into a network and possibly cameras there, and to build towards a working group. And that was accepted unanimously across the chamber. I have to say, I thought that I'm going to blow our own trumpets, but the piece of work done by the group on this was brilliant. Emma Wapples did the first draft. Mike Osborne went and really fleshed it out, and then I did a bit of polishing and brought in some of the stats around it, linking it to the priorities of the council. We then, because this is the way that we operate, we forwarded that to all the groups. The Labour group came back first, well in advance, saying they were willing to support it. I had a conversation today with the leader of the Conservative group, who detailed that they were willing to support it as well. Didn't hear back from the Dordon Independents or Reform. Didn't even get an acknowledgement. Don't know why. They both voted in favour, and all they had to do was say that. But there was nothing that came forward from there, which is, but I felt that today is that showed the best way that councils operate, is that you look to build consensus outside of the chamber. You don't have to have adjournments to consider amendments and motions and make things up effectively on the hoof, because there's a really great case to say that the chamber isn't the place to suddenly decide a lease. It's simply not the place to consider an amendment, around a course of action. Being able to consult on things is just a fundamental. But it's just what we should do. And there were 40 odd, 50 odd, 60, 70 people in the chamber who turned up to listen to hear, and I don't know how much they knew as to what was going on or what was being proposed. So it's really, that's not the best expression of democracy. That's not democracy working for people. I think we've ended up exactly where we'd have ended up anyway, but I think that people would have felt that it was done more satisfactorily if it was done in a different fashion. Anyway, those are the two things that were mainly there tonight. I hope this goes a little bit way to explain what was said. I didn't point out that one of the great things about non-league football is that the opposition goalkeeper can hear every word you say when you inquire as to his health. But I did get a little feeling today about how they might feel with with a group of people sat behind them wondering what they're going to do and say next, and if you're going to make a mistake. But hopefully those supporters today recognised that what we did as a group has kept that opportunity open for them. And if there's anything that I can do, if there's anything I could say, if there's anything, to act as a critical friend or to try and work together or whatever, then please do reach out and let me know, and I'll see what I can do. But as for everyone else, hope you had a lovely evening. 13 minutes on a piece of camera without notes. Wow, there you go. Hope you took some value. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.